Shalom Aleinu v'kol Amo Yisrael v'emu Amen.
Chazak u'baruch. Good morning, everyone. Mincha Arvit this afternoon, B'ezrat Hashem, will be at 5:25, followed by second Arvit at 9 o'clock. Again, we'd like to encourage everyone to come. There's going to be Chacham David Yosef, who's going to be here tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock speaking in English. Men and women are encouraged to attend. As well as on Thursday evening, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to have Harav Zamir Cohen from Hidabrut. Again, everyone is encouraged to attend. That's going to be in Ivrit. It's going to be in Hebrew. Also, everyone is encouraged to attend to see these great Talmidei Chachamim in our midst. We'd like to thank Torah Anytime, as well as Shul.com, as well as Sharei Ezra. Today is Yud Zayin Tevet Tafshin Pei Gimel. Today is the Yartzeit of many tzaddikim and tzidkaniyot, most notably that of Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Zev Kranz, most notably known as the Magen Medubna, who was very well known throughout Europe for having fantastic mishalim, unbelievable parables that literally would rivet people at their seats for literally hours, 3-4 hours of a derasha, and you could literally hear a pin drop. And he was known as a tremendous Talmid Chacham who used to go from city to city to exhort the people to tshuva. Many people changed their lives as a result of him, and he was a very big mizakeh Rabbi. The halacha is that when people come, many people come from all over the world to very exotic locations. So people like to taste certain items. So one of the things that people love that has the smell and the feel of it, the tropics, is that of pina colada. And usually the people who like to eat pina colada, they like to have it with like a coconut. Inside the coconut, they'll have that. So the question invariably is, what bracha do you make on the coconut? Let's say coconut water, or let's say the shell or the inside of the flesh of the coconut. What bracha do you make on such an item? So this is very interesting. The halacha is like this. Technically, something is pri ha'etz, meaning something is the fruit of the tree, if that's the primary purpose of that item. If you are using this item as a primary purpose, that is pri ha'etz. The greatest example of that you could see pri ha'etz is, we'll use, let's say, a geffen, for example. Let's say have a grape. So if you were to take we always talk about this halacha, if you were to take the actual grape, make the bracha, borei pri ha'etz, pop it in your mouth, that's fine. But if you were to squeeze the cluster of grapes inside your hand, the juice is dripping from your hand, you make a borei pri hagefen. Why? Because it upgrades now to, it's even better, because that's the real tachlit of this grape, is to actually produce wine or grape juice. In other words, it's even better than that. So the question now is, if something is cultivated for something that is, quote unquote, the pri ha'etz, is that right or not? So you're going to see something very fascinating. Coconut water, the argument could go is, yeah, that is actually pri ha'etz. Even though it's water, it's liquid, it should be shakol, but technically it's pri ha'etz too, because some people, there's a $1 million industry for vitamin cocoa water and coconut water. Yeah, PC, right? We have Shem and Zayt, now coconut water. So we're going to know Meir's diet at the end of the next few weeks. But the idea is that you have coconut water, so technically the argument can be made is, it's also pri ha'etz. So says Yaakov Yosef, a fascinating halakha. Really, if you make it mayim, we always know with water you make shakol. So liquid, you make shakol. However, he says, if one were to make a borei pri ha'etz on coconut water, yatsa. It's technically yatsa because some people, they cultivate it just for that. So if you were to have pina colada and not eat the flesh, of course if you eat the flesh, borei pri ha'etz. But if you not eat the flesh, you make a borei pri ha'etz, technically yatsa, because some people, they actually do have it primarily for the water in that scenario. He says also a common thing that people like to have when it talks about like sweet items for confections, when let's say it comes to chocolate. We know chocolate comes from the cacao bean, and that's grown on a tree. And technically, although it's miltayo kaimi, you could see exactly what it is. Chocolate has a very distinct color. Everyone knows what chocolate looks like. So technically, the halacha is, it should be like we said in previous cases, it should be the borei pri ha'etz, because you know it comes from a tree. I know clearly it's chocolate, so why should it be any different than, let's say, something that we said is adama, like anything that comes from potatoes. It's adama, no matter how finely it's ground. So also the argument should be made is the same thing for chocolate. However, it says, Yitzchak Yosef, he says, the fact is there's a lot of sugar, a lot of other additives that are added to the product, and therefore the minhag is we make a shakol. However, again, if you make a borei pri ha'etz, yatsa, again, because people know it comes from chocolate, and therefore you would make, if one were to make a shakol, that's what you should do, but if one were to make a borei pri ha'etz, also yatsa, it's not considered a bracha levatala in these two interesting scenarios. Rabbi Yonah in Berachot tells us that the reason why we mention Yitziat Mitzrayim, then we talk about Shirat Hayam, and now we're getting ourselves ready for Shemona Esrei, is to show complete, absolute trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Tefillah, that the Jewish people, Vayizaku, they called out to Hashem, then Hashem answered them. When they were in Mitzrayim, as well as in Shirat Hayam, Hashem answered our Tefillot. Now that we have such an assurance, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there for us, now we can pray to Him properly. that when it comes to, just two more ideas what this will include, when it comes to kinyanim, when it comes to acquiring something, there's a very interesting Gemara in Baba Metzia that tells us, the Gemara has a safek, a doubt about whether or not, if one were to see an item, just looking at it, you ever hear the people say, I saw it first, right? That's a real thing. Because the Gemara says, Ahava mina, maybe, potentially, just by seeing something, you're a koneh. What do you mean, seeing something? You didn't do anything. You didn't pick anything up. How in the world are you koneh something just by seeing? So it says Tosafot, he says an unbelievable thing. He says, technically, by you seeing, you are connecting yourself to that item. And if you were to do a small little action, just make a little fence around that item, the fact that you saw, coupled with the fact that you just made a little geder katan, a small thing around it, a small fence around it, that would make it that you're koneh, just by looking at something. It shows you the power of sight. And the Ramban says, not only that, he says, if somebody asks you to watch their item, you say, yeah, I'm watching it. You are now obligated to yourself, even though you didn't pick it up. Just by watching the item, you already made yourself a shomer. So you see, looking at something really makes you meshach shayach. It makes you really connected to that item in a very profound way. Also, if a person says something, I see in hefker, something is completely ownerless, I look at it, again, it becomes mine. Nafkamina, if let's say someone gets injured with that item, I considered it my item, so if someone were to Rahman get injured, technically I would be liable in that case. That's what you see from the from the Tosafot and Ramban. When it comes to sight, how far and how powerful sight is. Just with this idea, we'll conclude and say Kaddish. It says that when Bitya Bat Paro, when she was at the water, the Midrash tells us she was there to do tefillah, she was becoming a convert, and the Torah tells us, Batitatzev, she saw from Ma'achoto, she saw the sister who was standing there, V'hine nad bocheh, and behold, there was a young child crying. So Rashi HaKadosh says, who's the Nad Bocheh? It's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. Although he was a little baby, his voice sounded like that of a young child. So she said, he must be from the Jewish children. Says Rabbi Sachar, a beautiful idea. I always get chills whenever I think about this Dvar Torah. He says, the Midrash says the Nar is not referring to, he's arguing on Rashi, he says the Nar is not referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Nad Bocheh is referring to his older brother Aaron. Aaron was a young boy at that time, 3 years old, and he sees his little brother being cast on the Nile, and he starts crying. So he says, this must be a Jewish child. Because even a Jewish child knows the sensitivity and knows what a brother is. We look out for one another. A 3-year-old kid, he says to himself, what can I do? But at least I could cry for my fellow brother. That's a Jew. She said, that must be a child. Must be must be from the Jewish children. So ultimately, even if we can't help people with whatever, our monetary or whatever, time issues, whatever we have, the least we could do is at least empathize with them and feel their pain. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should grant all of us Yeshua v'nechama. We should not hear anyone's pains. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zachet to the Gula Shlema b'mehera v'meno. Amen. Rabbi Chanani ben Akashya Omer, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakot et Yisrael lefikach hamdan Torah mitzvot.